If ever you were to hear of Henry the Green Engine, many things would come to mind. Of his crash, of the flying kipper, of his new shape, and of his tunnel. When Henry was a young engine, and the railway was run by the fat director, the Green Engine had hidden in a tunnel, refusing to come out because of his fear of the rain. This story had become quite famous, and it had led to the designated naming of the tunnel after Henry, much to the big engine's chagrin. Years had passed, and the railway was winding down after a busy summer season. The Fat Controller had decided that a full inspection of the tunnels and bridges was in order to be prepared for the following year. The inspection work took a long time. Autumn was in full swing by the time the inspection came to Henry's tunnel. It was decided by the Fat Controller that the big green engine would take part in pulling engineering trains to and from the tunnel. The other engines found this arrangement very amusing.
Ho ho ho!
Chuckled Gordon.
How rich is this? Henry gets to help maintain his own tunnel!
Shut up!
Snapped Henry.
I wouldn't be surprised if the Fat Controller sent you to maintain your hill, or maybe even your ditch.
Pah! That will never happen.
Gordon sniffed. You know, Henry, I heard my driver saying the autumn shower should be arriving early, said James. So at least you'll be nearby someplace nice and dry to hide in. Henry hissed and fumed away to collect his goods. James was right, as the once bright blue autumn sky darkened to black clouds full of rain. Henry found himself sometimes wondering about taking James's advice to park himself inside his tunnel. Anything to keep out of the incessant drizzle. He grumbled dreadfully, much to the complaints of the workmen and his crew. A few weeks later, the weather became too rough, with plenty of rain, wind, and also landslides. The workmen decided to continue inspecting Henry's tunnel when the weather cleared. Henry was overjoyed to be free from the engineering train. But even so, the big green engine had work to do no matter what the weather. Henry stood waiting at Elsbridge Station just before the tunnel. He was pulling a small stopping goods to Knapford. With the tunnel under inspection, this left the double-track tunnel open. He was waiting for James to clear the section so he could get back to his nice dry shed. Soon the red engine shrieked through the station with his own goods train, grumbling dreadfully at the incessant downpour. Henry waited impatiently for the signal to turn green. Only it stayed at red until the station master walked up. I just got a message from James's guard. He said he felt a bump on the line in the tunnel and wants you to inspect it.
Oh, bother.
Henry fumed.
I just can't get away from that darn tunnel.
Grumbling dreadfully, Henry set off into the rainy evening. They got to the tunnel just as it was about to get dark. The weak light made the inside of the tunnel darker than ever. Henry shivered.
I don't want to go in.
Neither do I, but we must inspect the line, said his driver. In you go, old boy.
Oh dear. Oh dear.
Henry slowly puffed into the tunnel. As he left the driving wind and rain, it seemed to get colder inside the tunnel. Henry shivered as a breeze curled around his dome. He just wanted to get out of this tunnel soon. Not so nice memories returned to his mind. He had never told the other engines that during his time in the tunnel, he had been really frightened. Frightened that he would indeed be left there.
For always and always,
he said to himself, his voice echoing in the tunnel. Henry was almost out of the tunnel. He could see the rain on the other side pouring down. He had a moment to shudder at the thought of getting drenched before suddenly, Henry felt himself tip to the side wall of the tunnel as the rail bent out from under him. With a crunch, his left side hit the tunnel wall and he skidded to a stop. He cried, I guess we found the loose rail. I only wish we'd found it sooner. his driver said, trying to lighten the mood. Henry didn't see the funny side to it. The guard ran back to telephone for help. He returned shortly with bad news. Workmen can't get here till tomorrow. Henry might be here longer, as the workmen will have to inspect the tunnel wall given the damage to it.
Oh, joy.
Henry snorted.
Now the big ends will never let me hear the end of it.
Can't be helped, said his driver. The crew set up warning lamps and detonators to protect the train. They even set up an old work light to keep Henry company. Then they walked to a nearby road and caught a bus home. Henry sighed. He looked around. He could only see the tunnel entrance, but nothing beyond that.
At least it's dry here,
he grumbled. As if on cue, the rain slowed to a stop. Henry hissed in frustration.
And only now does the rain stop.
As the night wore on, the temperature dropped. The damp air became heavier and turned into mist, then into thick fog. Soon, Henry couldn't see anything outside the mouth of the tunnel. It just ended in a dark gray wall illuminated by the work light. He began to wish the light was turned off. Every shadow and sound became very eerie. Henry gulped nervously.
I should get some sleep.
He thought.
It'll be tomorrow soon. I'll be back at Tinmouth in no time.
So Henry closed his eyes and tried to fall asleep. However, he found sleep didn't come easily. The big green engine grumbled to himself as he tried time and time again to drift off.
Oh, bother. This wretched weather. Hello?
Henry blinked and quickly looked around. He thought he had heard something. A voice of some kind.
Hello? Is someone there? Oh, for goodness sakes. I need to get some sleep.
He closed his eyes again and just sat quietly to let his mind drift off.
Hello?
Henry's eyes snapped open. That time he was certain he'd heard something.
Hello? Who's there? Botheration. Who is there? Speak up! Let me out.
Henry blinked in confusion.
What do you mean? Who's there? Oh, this is just ridiculous. Whoever is there, answer me!
Better keep out of the rain, Henry. It'll spoil your paint.
Henry jumped as another voice spoke closer to him. He looked to his right, only to see part of an engine's tender. He blinked a few times, but the blue paint was unmistakable. He didn't know how this engine could have gotten here without him realizing it, and it didn't sound like Edward or Gordon.
Ah! How? How did you get there? Who are you?
The engine just chuckled.
I've always been here, Henry. It seems you took my advice to heart and found a nice dry tunnel to stop in.
I did not. This was an accident.
Henry said, getting frustrated.
Now, who are you?
It's the only place for a failure like you, Henry.
What? Who are you calling a failure?
Now the rain won't turn you into a pile of rust who's always moaning about how dreadful he feels. You'll be preserved forever, a failed engine hybrid.
Henry just stared. Whoever this engine was, they seemed to talk about him as if he was still in his old shape.
I am not a hybrid anymore. I'm fixed. The Fat Controller...
The Fat Director wanted an Atlantic, Henry, but instead he got you. We all know that. But it wasn't some seller who cheated the railway. It was you. All you. You knew if you stayed at your workshop, they would scrap you for parts. So you ran away here, cheated the Fat Director out of a lot of money, and became a burden. Now you can stay here in this nice dry tunnel and never have to move again. Such a selfish engine.
You shut up! That's not true!
A selfish engine. But at least now you are nice and dry. Because, Henry, if you get wet, you get rusty. Rust never sleeps. It eats away at you, slowly until one day you suddenly collapse and fall apart. But not now. Not here. Your green paint and red stripes will remain perfect forever in this nice dark tunnel for always. And always.
Hey! Come back! Where are you going? How do you know so much about me?
Then the engine just puffed away, silently into the darkness of the tunnel. Henry couldn't help but ponder those words as they rattled in his smoke box. He had been told about rain, and how it caused engines to rust, and he did want to remain functional back in the day. Then he heard the voices coming back. They were louder and more clear this time. Henry recognized where they were coming from. Outside, from the other tunnel, and the voice was his own. Slowly, another voice could be heard.
We shall pull you out. 1, 2, 3, pull! No, I shall not ruin my paint for you. It will begin again soon. And what will become of my paint then?
Henry closed his eyes, trying to ignore the voices, as if they were just in his smoke box. But they continued, becoming louder and louder.
I'm not gonna ruin my paint for you. Then we shall take away your rails and leave you here for always and always and always and always forever. No, sir, please. No, Henry. You want to stay in the tunnel? Then you shall stay here.
Selfish engine. Scrap engine.
You are a bad engine. Please, sir, let me out. My doctor has forbidden me to push. I want to come out. Such a selfish engine. I don't want to be scrapped. Please, let me out.
Selfish. Lazy engine.
For always and always and always. Forever and ever. Always. Please, let me out. Let me out.
Selfish. Rust never sleeps. Fall apart.
I'll be good. I'll be really useful. I'll pull any train. I'll do anything you ask. I won't complain. Please, sir, give me another chance. Let me out. Let me out. Please, sir. I'll behave. I won't do it again. Please, just let me out.
Henry screamed. He didn't care if these voices were in his mind. He just couldn't take it anymore.
Stop it. Stop it. Stop it, please. Just stop. Let me out. Let me out. Please. Let me out. Let me out. Please. I'll be good.
Failed engine. Rust away in the rain. Green paint. No more. Rust.
Let me out.
Scrap. Failure. Rust.
Please.
Fall apart. Rust never sleeps.
Please. Let me out. Let me out.
Henry? Henry! Henry, wake up! Henry's eyes snapped open. He looked down to see his driver and fireman with the works train being pushed by Edward. The fog was gone, and a light drizzle fell outside. He looked around and sighed in relief. Is there something wrong? His driver asked. You were mumbling in your sleep.
I was.
Henry yawned.
What was I saying?
Something about being let out. Search me what you meant by that, though, the driver said, shrugging. Henry just looked down at his buffers and said no more. It took some time, but soon Henry was lifted back onto the rails. Edward buffered up and began to pull Henry to the works. Edward noticed the downcast expression on the green engine's face.
Dear me, Henry, what's wrong?
He asked. Henry said nothing. He wasn't sure what to say. What could he even say? That he had had a bad dream? But it had felt so real. It couldn't have been a dream. Could it? Finally, Edward said,
I see. If you ever want to talk about it, you know I'm always here to lend you a listening ear.
Henry said nothing, and the two puffed all the way to the works as the rain drizzled down from the sky.